Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I'm the Senior Director of Event Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women brand marketers today. And with me is Crystal Millican. She is the SVP of Marketing and Retail at Cookies, which is the nation's largest cannabis lifestyle company. Hey, how is it? How are you, Crystal?
Hi, I'm doing wonderfully. How are you, Lisa?
I'm good. Last we saw each other, gosh, it seems like forever ago now at the which event was it?
The Media Brand Insider event in Tahoe.
In
Yeah,
Tahoe, yes.
that's right.
Anyway, we had a great panel. That was awesome. But now I get to ask you more personal stuff, which I love. So we'll we'll
I'm
we'll, we'll just jump right into it because well, all right. I had already been looking at your, your LinkedIn page and mostly about what you're doing in terms of for the brand. But I also do my snooping for you personally. And looking at the description, I want to read it because I want to say it correctly. You describe yourself on the profile, working to set a vision for the future and then develop strategies and action plans to drive transformational growth. Okay, so that's what you're doing for work.
yeah.
But for yourself, what has been the most impactful or most life altering transformation that you've been through? And not within work, but like it could be with your career or personal in that side of things, not like, a campaign that was difficult or something like that.
Yeah. That's a wonderful question to start off with. I think it's interesting to think about how life and work sometimes work in parallel.
Mhm.
So, I had spent a decade plus, probably closer to 15 years in management consulting. And that's what I was doing, was really helping, big brands and companies with huge transformational growth opportunities.
Mhm.
Um, that's how Cookies came into my world as a client first. And then right as at that time, I also, had my first child. So I think if I think about it all together, I made kind of this exciting leap in my career at the same time that I was bringing life into the world. And so I had about 6 years ago, had kind of like a big, huge transformational journey myself in terms of coming into a company like Cookies, which just had a massive scaling growth plan footprint ahead of us. And then at the same time, kind of the rocket ship that is parenthood, and particularly that rocket ship when you're a working mom.
I'm curious, did you ever think, like, did you pause for a moment? When you're going for this whole new, because I mean, we're going to get into your career a little bit more, but like you said, that's quite the transition as is, and never
Yeah.
mind with anything else happening in your life.
Yeah.
And then you're having a baby, your first baby. Like,
Mhm.
was there a moment where you were sort of like, can I do this?
It's a good question. I feel like there wasn't really that moment for me, and the reason why is I think for me two things were happening at the same time. One, just saw an opportunity in a new industry, in a new space where I could have endless growth for myself, and I'm a learner. That's the type of person I am, so it just felt like this huge opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And at the same time, kind of this uh need to provide for what was going to be my future family at the time. So, yeah, kind of made the leap without looking back. And I've definitely had moments along the way where I'm like, I've got so many wrinkles and gray hair now. Like, should I be doing this? But the
Uh-huh.
can I? It wasn't so much can I do it. It was more about like how can I not do it?
Yeah, it was just the opportunity was, maybe timing might have been, I don't want to say better because everything, I mean, you wouldn't
Happens
change one
doesn't
of it.
happen.
You wouldn't change having, was it a boy or
Yeah.
girl?
Girl, I have two girls. Yeah.
Okay. So you wouldn't change having your daughter
Yeah.
for anything. But again, you're so happy a cookie, so you wouldn't change that. So I don't mean it in better timing, but just the fact that sometimes you get bombarded with a lot and you either take it all on or you pick and choose. And so you chose to just take it all on.
Yeah. I think both working for a startup and motherhood coming at the same time, I'm pretty much like, I can do almost anything now. I think I can take it on. Throw anything at me. I will figure out how to get it all done.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, that's quite a force right there. So, I'm because also, I mean, working in the cannabis industry, different from what you had been doing. You've been mostly, with what Fortune 500 type
Mhm.
companies.
Yeah.
And as you said, a startup,
Mhm.
and it's your baby now. I mean, sort of, not
Yeah,
your,
yeah, yeah. It's another baby. It definitely feels that way.
like you're on the brand side.
Mhm.
It's not. I mean, not that it's not as important when you're a consultant or working for an agency, but I want to get into again even before that more in just terms of when you think of the cannabis industry, and it's not necessarily women at the top. Women. It's not. It can be very male focused.
Yeah.
What was your experience like? Did you experience any challenges in that sense of it, or are you still experiencing anything?
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons I am at Cookies, in a lot of ways, right? Not just for women, but for BIPOC people, individuals who came from the legacy market and cannabis, right? I think at Cookies, we hold it as a core value, inclusion, right? And cannabis is a very inclusive thing. So, would I have made my career transition for any cannabis company? Nope. There are plenty of cannabis clients who I would have taken on as clients who I would have not made this career change with, right? But for Cookies, again, I just knew the opportunity was so big and so special. And a lot of that had to do with kind of the core values of the brand, which is all about inclusivity. I am very bullish for women in the cannabis space. I talk to my team about this a lot. I think cannabis has this huge opportunity to leave behind glass ceilings and kind of other mechanisms that hold certain people back based on color of skin or gender, sexual orientation. So I view cannabis as having this huge opportunity to shatter those glass ceilings and really start an industry that is inclusive from the beginning. Do I think it's perfection in its current state? No. Some days is it hard to be a woman in the cannabis industry? Absolutely. I got bruises myself from time to time, but I'm very optimistic. And the thing that keeps me going, and even the hardest days, the women who I work with in the space and the other female executives who I meet are tremendously incredible, talented, smart, and powerful. So I think there's a lot there. There's a sisterhood within the cannabis industry. And a lot of us who I think are trying to lay the foundation for an industry that, kind of get a fresh start here in cannabis.
Well, I'm curious in the sense of, because obviously with Cookies, as you said, the brands that maybe you wouldn't have gone to,
Yeah.
and I'm not asking you to be
Yeah.
specific, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering what was it, or what were some of the bruises like, is there any specific example of something that you had to deal with it, and how did you deal with it? Had to deal with some sort of,
Yeah.
whether it just them not treating you well or just not listening to you, like what was happening?
There's a few things, right? I think women in the middle age with a certain type of pedigree, right? It's kind of interesting to think like I can be looked at as like a cop or a Karen. There's like these types of things that I understand where it's coming from, but it can be challenging. You can also have other bruises that come along the way in the cannabis industry, which I think are very familiar to all of us, right? I just went to this women's executive dinner, which was an incredible networking opportunity. I met so many incredible human beings at the end of it. A man walked in to kind of eat the leftovers of the food and knows our founders who are men in the space, and was like, oh, so what's your job? Do you herd cats? Right. So, there's still all the same
stereotypes and
Exactly, that kind of come along the way. Like, okay, the founding male team and the female executive is a cat herder type of
Mhm.
Bruce.
Right. Well, I'm curious, and I think everyone has different ways, women have different ways of dealing with it, but you said you're bullish. So like, do you hit it head on? Like if someone's, saying a comment like that, do you just want to let it slide and keep the peace? Or do you really need to, because a part of what you want to do is forge the way for more women to be a part of what you're doing and to
Yeah,
be in the level where you are at. So
yeah.
how do you handle that situation in as, like you don't want to always rock the ship, but at the same point, if you don't, then it's never going to change.
Yeah, I think this is part of my own upbringing, probably, is to use a bit of humor to point out injustice, which is, probably a bit of a tightrope walk and a mechanism, because maybe I don't feel comfortable hitting it directly on, like, that's an insult and I don't like it. And I do a lot of things at Cookies. So I don't necessarily hit it all head on in that exact way. I think my personal response is typically I think I responded something like, yeah, that's me, chief cat herder over here at the women's executive dinner, right? Just to be like, come on.
Okay. Like you're obviously not agreeing, or you're letting them know
Right,
that this is, but at the same point, you're not being confrontational per se.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
and I think that I mean, I know women can get a bad rep anyway. Like if a woman who speaks up and is strong and is opinionated can get like, oh, she's the B word, or, whatever. And it's just, and whereas men, not necessarily. But with that, even, I'm not saying, I still think you can get a little better with humor or with honey or with, even, and it's not about being a woman and not wanting to be considered this, diva bitch or whatever. Can I
yeah,
say it? I said it. So,
yeah.
um, but also just, I think sometimes hitting someone head on, you're going to get, as opposed to if you pepper it a little bit with something, lighter.
Yeah, and I think too, allows for a softer entry into learning, right? Which I think I do feel like um in cannabis have very strong partnerships with male coworkers and colleagues, right? And you can get to learning faster and easier. I think sometimes humor is a softer landing around that. Yeah, I think, you know, using the word bitch, I think another one that comes out a lot, which I've talked to and coached on a few times, is like the word condescending, right? So women who are, and usually I find they're trying to be polite about the fact that they know what they're talking about. Maybe you don't. And so I don't find that condescending. I find it competent and polite. And I think sometimes in in male dominated spaces that can be received as condescending. So I've had that conversation with a couple male coworkers a few times, right? I think that's an important one to have too.
Well, and I love that you have the conversation, because I do sometimes think that these stereotypes, or even how a person is, like a guy might be reacting
Mhm.
to something you say and they think it's condescending, but it's not coming from that place. So to discuss it, and then it gets it out in the open, so I feel like that's huge. It's not everything comes from anger or hate or, whatever. It's sometimes just ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree.
So
Absolutely.
I want to get back into your career, when you, like, let's go back to college and when you're graduating and you're, envisioning, your future. Like, talk about that. What did you see for yourself? Were you like, hey, I'm going to be SVP of a cannabis company, or like what was your goal? And talk about that and the path to where you are today.
Yeah. So it's interesting to go that far back and think that far back. I'm the first grandchild on both sides of my family to graduate from college. So that was, my parents didn't go. That was kind of like their big goal for me, is go to college, right? So you do that. Um, and that's kind of where the, family mentorship, like that, I kind of like achieved what they had set out for me, right? So it was that from then on, it was kind of a path to blaze as kind of the oldest child, and the child who's going to figure out what's next in terms of defining what a what the future and career was going to look like at that point. You know, I got a Fulbright. I love Spanish. I was an econ major. So I, didn't quite know what I was going to do, quite frankly. Right. And so, applied for a Fulbright grant. I went to Mexico City. I did economic research there for a year and took MBA courses. Had an interest in consulting. So I was applying to a bunch of different places all across the US and LA and San Francisco and New York. Ended up with a consulting company. Quickly was poached from that consulting company to go to Google. So lovingly say, kind of grew up at Google. It is everything that everyone says it is. It's a wonderful place to work. I was trying to decide whether I stay at Google and kind of continue to grow on that path. Thought I was going to get an MBA, so was studying for that. And that's when another management consulting company came in and snatched me up at that point in time. It was my mentor there. Her name is Julie Lanassa, an incredibly talented woman, a former Accenture, former McKinsey, had broken off and was doing a boutique management consulting firm at the time, which had a few people, but she was getting ready to pitch a Fortune 10 client on a pretty big B2B sales transformation project. So needed just some extra analytical and consultative muscles with her. Did that again, thought I was going to continue on the path of pursuing an MBA. And then just kept spending more and more time helping her with her project. She sold the work, and then ended up spending, I think, 12 years with her consulting company. So kind of grew that business with her and enjoyed every second of it. Got to work with a lot of talented people across multiple industries, had work in the US and Canada and South America, Mexico and Asia. So that's kind of, I loved it. I love the management consulting career. I loved what I was doing. Didn't think about leaving it. I was able to make healthy work-life choices, kind of took on new verticals as part of that practice there. And through that, kind of knew cannabis was coming in a meaningful way. And knew, as in all things, that brands would win at the end of the day. So within the consulting firm was kind of preparing us to be ready for cannabis clients and the type of transformational growth they were going to go through. And that's when Cookies kind of came in as a client from there.
Right. And obviously the love at first sight.
Yeah. Knew it was special really quickly.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because, you said when you went to Google that you were happy. You thought that's where you're going to stay. What made you not? What made you go back to consulting? I mean, because I think on one end, I personally loved being a freelancer because I loved the changing, the different shows, whatever, for me, shows that for you products. But I'm just curious, what was it that they had that made you say, I'm going to make that leap and leave a great company like Google?
I think it's exactly like you mentioned, right? You can stay at Google for decades, right? And you absolutely will learn and you absolutely will stretch. You absolutely will eat organic kale that's locally sourced for lunch every day, right? It's like an incredible place to be. I think that I looked at other options where just individually you can grow faster and stretch further and learn more. And at that point in my career, I just saw a faster path leaving Google. And in my mind too, I always thought maybe I'll come back, right? Maybe I'll go back to Google. But the learner in me felt like there were paths where I would be stretched further faster outside of the behemoth that is Google.
Right. Well, and I don't want to just skirt by the whole Fulbright scholar thing. I mean, that's the best and brightest. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, and your parents hadn't been to college. They must have been thrilled to not only you're graduating college, but you're a Fulbright scholar as well.
Yeah. They were thrilled for sure. Right. And first person in my family to have a passport too. So it was, it was exciting. It was a dream. I applied for it, of course, with having no idea whether or not I was going to get it. I also had an incredible mentor at University of Arizona who I think has been very successful of getting kind of his the students that he thought could achieve a Fulbright. He was very helpful in helping carve out the application that was going to stand out in that process. So very appreciative of Dr. Decker as well, who helped me snag that one.
Shout out to Dr. Decker.
Yeah.
I think, as you said, it went to Mexico. And
Yeah.
so, which, I mean, the whole idea of Fulbright scholarships are that you're basically becoming a part of another culture. So you're learning from each other. And you talked about that a little bit at the top in terms of what it's like at Cookies and
Yeah.
how it's very diverse and you really want to be inclusive. And so obviously that started there or even before, but then it's continuing on to where you are now. How are you able to do it more at Cookies? You touched on it a little bit, but to really bring that inclusivity to not only the workplace, but also to your marketing, because we have to see it there as well for just the public in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at Cookies and in cannabis, right? All types of people, BIPOC people, touch the plant from seed to sale, right? So from the second you're putting it into the ground, growing it, trimming it, packaging it, putting it on a retail shelf, right? Putting it out into the world. I think there's so many different types of people who are bringing that to life, right? And then in the end, I feel like cannabis is on a spiritual side and on a unifying force, right? Like in our retail space, we put flower tables in that are circular. And the reason we do that is going back to how cannabis started. A lot of people, you're in a circle, you're sharing an experience together. And so, I think at Cookies, it is kind of a unifying plant. And we honor and respect all the different people that bring that experience to life. We also talk about kind of like our mission isn't just, sell a lot of cannabis or be the biggest cannabis and lifestyle brand on the planet, right? We've achieved those things, but the mission really is about bringing people together to make them feel good, right? I think day to day, there's real tough news out there. Financially, things are hard. I think politically, things are hard. Economically, things are hard. And so what we talk about is how do we bring, products and an experience to life that if you're looking to relax, you can relax. If you're looking to laugh, you can laugh, kind of really be, we have the honor and opportunity to be part of someone's day. And we take that very seriously.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I definitely, you see that in your ad, like which is a hard thing. We're not going to get into all that, but I know advertising for cannabis can have its challenges, but you're able to still do that. I want to throw out there because I think it's cool. One of your, I guess your most popular brands or strains is the Girl Scout cookie. Is that what it's called? Girl Scout?
Yeah, that's the original strain that brought us all here today and really kind of defined the cannabis space. So we have two co-founders. Jai is our plant whisperer and breeder who played a big part on the strain Girl Scout cookies coming to life. And then our other co-founder is Berner, who at the time, 15 years ago, when this strain was kind of taking on a life of its own in the legacy market in cannabis, was a bud tender and an aspiring rapper who then took that strain and brought it to all the rappers as they came through the Bay Area. And that kind of, started in a San Francisco garage 15 years ago. And I think they say, the Girl Scout cookie strain is in 98% of cannabis in some way now. It was so prolific.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go away from the cannabis and just, what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Oh, actual Girl Scout cookie? I actually do. My favorite is Thin Mints. So I put it in the freezer and I eat it ice cold.
I'm with you on that one, definitely. Yeah, no, I look at things and things pop in my head. I'm like, oh, we're talking cannabis, but I still want to know what your favorite cookie is.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there something that what do most people get wrong about you when they first meet you?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting thing that's come up in the last 5 years from a couple places, both in a professional sense, and also from a best friend who I was like, really, you know, I think I am a learner, so sometimes I'm taking things in, and I think that can sometimes come across as, I think my best friend told me, she's like, well, you're kind of hard to get to know. And I was like, what? You know, that's a surprising thing for a best friend to say, that you're hard to get to know. But I think it's, you know, as a learner, I think I have a lot to say, but sometimes it's, I think about it first, and it can come off as maybe like not as open as some other people are.
I mean, I think it can be, because I tend to take in the room, or take in
Yeah.
like people are saying, and listen, and then talk. So I sort of, it's, standoffish, or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. But it's just like, but it is. I think I tend to speak though as I think of things. So I'm mad, and I had to kind of learn that. That's why everyone was always like I was gullible, because growing, like in high school, because I would just say things or whatever that popped in my head, or I believe it, or anyway. But I do tend to be, people think of me as quiet at first. So I'm just curious if are you sort of taking it in, and then from there going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I tend to take it in. So I'm, and I'm also think I'm a little bit curious about differing viewpoints, right? So like if someone's coming to me with a problem and they have their version of what that problem is, I might agree with it right away and tell you I agree with it right away. I also might say, thank you for coming to me with this problem. And I automatically, and this is probably the consultant in me too, put my feet in the shoes of all the people who are involved in an issue or an opportunity, and really try to understand where they're coming at it. And then understanding kind of all those motivations usually helps like point the path forward a little bit faster. So I do tend to take in, try to see multiple angles of what the issue might be before coming in with direction and solution. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah. No. Is that how you? Because has there been a challenge? What the biggest challenge you've had to face? And I'm curious if maybe you look at it that way, sort of that consulting, hat, and say like you faced a challenge maybe, and you thought maybe this is not one I can get through, or it was just so overwhelming, but you did ultimately get through it. How did you handle that? Was there something like that? And if so, how did you handle it? Do you put on that consulting hat, what you just described, or is there, when it's you personally, do you respond differently?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I'll take I'll think about it professionally first, and I'll think personally if there's a difference between how I do it personally and professionally. Um, in the cannabis space, and this is one of the reasons why I like it, I think for intellectually curious people, there's two ways to look at the cannabis space. You can look at it as highly regulated, limited, nonstop problems, right? And those three things are absolutely true. I think I'm the type of person who looks at regulation, and instead of looking at the limits, kind of look at the opportunities, right? Also, I'm a big believer that brands are bigger than packaging, bigger than advertising, bigger than the stores you put the product in, right? It's like when you are doing it right, you are connecting with a customer in a very deep way. And whether I can have Gary Payton strain art in California or a white bag with a simple label in Florida, I look at that as an opportunity for us to tap in even deeper to those customer connections. And a brand is bigger than a logo. So I think I and my team probably gets sick of this, right? I tend to take in any challenge and look at it as an opportunity. And when you are able to frame it in that way, and you're working with incredibly talented people, I find you can usually get over all those hurdles. On my personal side, I think I personally am the same way. I'm sure it's exhausting for my husband. And I probably need to double click on that before my kids get too old. I think it's okay too to like have a failure and feel defeat. Like that's important. I probably need to work on that before my kids get too old. On the personal side, I could see that being tiring. to have a mom who's just like, okay, what's the next challenge all the time?
Well, that's true too. But was there a time when maybe you weren't quite like you almost feel like there I can't get through it? I mean, if you want to share it.
Yeah, I'm trying, like, we have, and I think this is a bit of me too, right? It's like we'll we'll bulldoze where we need to bulldoze, and also I say this lovingly, right? Can turn ourselves into human pretzels where we need to be really flexible. I'm trying to think of a challenge that I was like, oh, we just we didn't go through it. Obviously strategically there's certain things that
I
have,
don't want
yeah,
challenges, in the campaign. It can be career, it can be about work, or it can be personal, but more just you, not necessarily a challenge from like how do we handle this the strategy in a campaign.
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think a challenge. And the question is a challenge where,
You at first were just like, oh my gosh, I can't get through this, or you were just overwhelmed, or you were defeated, but then you were able to get through it, or maybe you didn't get through it and you handled it and you went to the whatever. Like how was there a time when you felt so defeated and then either you got through it or you said okay, move on to the next, or whatever, however you resolved it for yourself?
yeah, I think there have been like the way we were growing through partnerships in our space, right? And I think we've had some challenging partnerships, right? Where it can feel like you are running into a wall and like you can't make progress and you can feel very defeated, right? I tend to find in those moments, if I keep doing what I know and what I think that my team knows is the kind of the best thing for the brand, and the best thing for the business. If you can keep pushing on those two things, even if you're standing at a wall for a while, that wall can move, right? So in this example, I'm being a little bit careful about, because I love, our partnerships are very important for our growth, right? Definitely felt like we were at a wall. Turns out, leadership can shift, and all of a sudden that wall comes down and you can take steps with new people, for example. So I think that's kind of the approach, is even if you're kind of standing at the wall, to keep kind of like tapping around and looking for an opportunity to enter, and keep doing what's kind of best for the brand and best for the business, and usually you can get there eventually.
Trust what you're doing, right? But stay at it, stay
Yeah,
persistent.
yeah, stay persistent.
Okay, so well, another thing, and I don't know if this is a cookies slogan or just it was another. It was because it wasn't written on a cookies website, but it said for cookies is cannabis curated for the connoisseur.
Hmm.
Is that a cookies, or is that someone just dubbed you guys that because you're that good? Well,
You could have seen that on a billboard. Yeah, we talk about that, curated for the connoisseur. Yeah.
so my question is, what are you a connoisseur of? And not about cannabis, but
Okay. Interesting. I'm not, like, I think this is what is, I say this in a lot of facets of life. My husband is in film and music, right? And he has very specific tastes and is absolutely a connoisseur. And I joke that I'm like, I'll watch anything and I will like it usually, right? I kind of like, and even so that's kind of, and I think that's the same across life. I'm a little bit more of a, maybe this again kind of goes back to curiosity, right? Like I want to experience and have adventures across multiple disciplines and countries, and all kind of, I'm a broad and not a narrow person. So I mean, I guess if I'm a connoisseur of anything, it's probably like research. Just kind of like I like I like digging into whatever it is.
no, and I think that it's well, I had that that was said to me once. But they called it a marketing personality, that you kind of can fit in to a lot of different things. But and I was warned. I'm like, on one hand, that's a good positive thing, but on another hand, it's like I maybe am like just spreading myself around, like I'm not finding what's right. I'm just kind of going around with everything. So yeah, it can go either way. But I wonder if that's like a marketer's trait, you know, as a journalist, which can be crosses over similar characteristics as a marketer. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like I'm as interested in the customer who has, is curious about cannabis, but maybe has never tried it or doesn't know much about it as I am about the connoisseur, right? And I sometimes lovingly that phrase that we use, I think it's curated by a connoisseur, right? And we have products that are for connoisseurs, but I think part of the future and the growth and the vision is whether you're a connoisseur or, canna curious, want you to be able to experience the brand and experience cannabis and the product and the lifestyle in the way that suits you. So I think, maybe maybe I just I'm a connoisseur of a marketing personality.
All right, final question, just a little quick one. Favorite indulgence? Like what is your guilty pleasure?
Okay, that's really easy. And then here's to like people not saying I'm open. I love Bravo TV. It's like the thing that I watch at the end of the night once my got work done, got the kids to bed, finished the round of emails to schedule send so people don't feel like they have to respond to me at 10 p.m. at night. I will watch Bravo TV and then go to bed.
But any particular show jump out as a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Real Housewives, have to admit that. And then yeah, it's pretty much Real Housewives. Any city, I will watch it.
That's so funny. I knew some from when I was in Corona Del Mar. I knew one in particular, but I've met some of her friends. She was a Real Housewife. But I was at her place and my dog ran into he ran into the shot. They were shooting. So my dog, I don't know if he might not make the cut. I'm not sure. I like to think he did, but he ran into the living room of the housewife's place that I was at during shooting.
I love it. We're about to get cannabis in New York, and I'm like, I got to figure out how to get our weed to Andy Cohen. I know he partakes, and get Burner on Watch What Happens Live. That's a personal goal of mine.
Good. He's going to be at Adweek. I don't know if you're
okay. Good to know.
California, so it's not like you can run there. If I run into him during the week, I'll let him know.
Got free weed anytime.
Sounds perfect. Oh, Crystal, thank you so much. This has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with me.
Lovely speaking with you as always, Lisa. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You too. And thank you for watching. As always, if you have anyone that you want me to sort of pull back the curtain on, a woman marketer, I would love to hear who you'd like me to talk with, and I will do my best. So thanks for watching, and Crystal, thanks again.